it's for the greater good. But what if my child has to go to school with a child who didn't get vaccinated? Well, let me tell you, if your vaccine works, you have nothing to worry about. Welcome back to Come and Take It. Hope you guys are having a great week. Make sure if you're watching this on YouTube that you go ahead and smash that like button, as all the cool kids are saying. No, but make sure that you hit the thumbs up and comment. Let me know what you think about this topic that I'm about to talk about. I know that this is a very hotly contested topic, but it is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I see this conversation beginning here in the state of Texas, and I'm very, very excited about it. So those of you who have watched me for a very long time know that the topic of vaccine choice is something that I have been preaching about, that I have worked on an activist level about with my dear friends over at Texans for Vaccine Choice for over a decade.
It is important. It's very, very important.
We have been I've been looking into the topic of vaccines and vaccine choice. And so I want to tell you about what's going on now here in the state of Texas. And then I want to kind of back up and explain how things are currently situated and why that's not okay. So over at TexasScorecard.com, they have an article about Andy Hopper, who is an incoming Texas state representative, who is proposing an amendment to the state constitution establishing a right to refuse vaccinations. So this is House Joint Resolution 91. It would amend Article 1 of the Texas Constitution to declare that an individual has the unalienable and natural right to refuse a vaccination. Oh my goodness. This is like my jam, Andy. Andy Hopper, man. Yes, yes, yes. It says the vaccination status of an individual may not be made a condition of employment, travel, school, or other educational institution attendance, conducting business, receiving governmental services, or any other action in this state. So the resolution, obviously, it has to receive 2/3 support in the Texas House, 2/3 support in the Texas Senate. And then if that happens, voters would have the opportunity to vote on it. So they would either accept it or reject it, yay or nay, ratify or reject, in an election planned for November 4th, 2025.
So lots of choices.
The ballot measure, so when you go to the ballot box, you're in the booth, this is what you will read: the constitutional amendment recognizing the right of an individual to refuse a vaccination. Now, this is a topic that I have been trying to explain the error in Texas law for a very long time, and I'm so excited that this has finally come to the forefront. You know, I always said that if there was a silver lining to COVID, it would be things like this. It would be the fact that now we are having these conversations because we saw Big Pharma just totally overplay their hand when it came to this public-private partnership that they built with the government. And then we had a mandate that we had to take their vaccine, or else you don't get to feed your family. And so that would be, I guess, one of the silver linings in looking back at what we learned from the pandemic. So Andy Hopper gave a statement to Texas Scorecard. He said that he wanted, the point of all of this was to, quote, forever protect Texans from being coerced by any person or entity to take a vaccine in order to participate in society. He said, over the past 2 sessions, we've seen good bills that targeted certain types of vaccines, but Texans deserve comprehensive protection that will ensure that they are never extorted by others to inject something into their body, especially when our government has indemnified pharmaceutical companies from adverse effects. Texas must protect her citizens from every tyranny. Andy, you are speaking my language, sir. I mean, I know Andy Hopper. I don't know him well. I know him. I consider him a friend. I didn't know you had this in you, Andy. My goodness. So he brings up, all the points that he brings up are so great. What he's referring to, of course, is that about a year ago, Governor Abbott already signed into law a measure banning COVID-19 vaccine mandates by private employers. So that was a year ago, and it only extended to the COVID-19 vaccine. And so it's like, well, if you can agree that we shouldn't be forcing or coercing Texas citizens into taking an injection that they are uncomfortable with.
I am totally uncomfortable, V.
Like, you've got to extend that to every single vaccine. You've got to extend that to any sort of coercion when it comes to something that is injected into your body. Because, I mean, we saw what happened in the COVID era when people said, well, it's not a government, it's not a vaccine mandate. You don't have to. If your employer is mandating that you get the vaccine, you could just get another job. You could just quit and find something else. I mean, well, yeah, it is forcing. It is coercing. It is, of course, mandating. Because if your options are, and guys, I am so glad. I am so glad to work for and with organizations that would never have even dared mandate something like that. Like working over at Blaze, I never had to worry that I was going to have to choose between my bodily autonomy, my personal autonomy, and like feeding my family. But that was the choice that you put in front of these people. Well, you don't have to take the vaccine, but you're not going to get paid. So you're not going to be able to pay your bills. You're not going to be able to feed your family. You can't make your rent or your mortgage. Then you're going to get kicked out of your house. Then you're going to be homeless. And you won't be able to take care of your children. But don't worry, you still have a choice. I mean, no, they didn't. So I love that we are now able to have this conversation again about whether or not Texas wants to be the freedom-loving, liberty-loving, just bastion of free society that all of these other states perceive us to be, which, by the way, we're being out-Texased by Florida. Don't even get me started on all of that, because Florida is taking all of these, measures that 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago they took them, and now we're just now getting around to signing something that says after the fact, after the fight was had, Greg Abbott signed something into law that was passed by our legislature that says you're not allowed to mandate COVID-19 vaccines. Could have used that a couple years ago, but great work, guys. A day late and $1 short. And the reason why this gets me so hot is when you look at how Texas law is written now. So Andy Hopper is proposing this because Texas law obviously does not recognize this right. And you see that within the Texas public school system. And there's a lot of misinformation surrounding what the Texas law actually is. So if you are concerned, if you are only vaccinating your children because you say, well, public schools require it and my kids have to go to school, that is actually a little bit, there's some nuance there, okay? So while there are vaccine mandates to go to public school, they do require children to be up to date on vaccination, up to date only according to Big Daddy government, okay? But there are exemptions in the state of Texas. You can request an exemption for medical reasons, for religious reasons, or for just conscientious reasons. Like, hey, I don't wanna. And that should be good enough. And here in the state of Texas, for a very long time, we have patted ourselves on the back for having such broad exemptions when it comes to vaccines in public schools and in higher education. Oh, and also in any schools that receive government money, because that applies to them as well. So you could have a private school, but if they are receiving any sort of government funds, Texas funds, they still have to abide by these exemptions as well. They still have to accept them. And so for a very long time, Texas, I know, has been like, oh, but we have the most broad exemptions.
We're pretty awesome.
Totally awesome.
We're so good on the topic of vaccine choice. But tell me, if your focus is freedom and liberty and preserving those for Texas citizens, tell me why I am required by my government to go onto a government website, type in my name, my phone number, my address, tell them where I live, tell them who I am, tell them what my child's name is the child that I would like to request an exemption for. And then I have to submit that to my big daddy government, who then has to send me a form that I have to get filled out and notarized, and then give it to the school in question so that they can keep it on file. That's not freedom. The fact that I have to answer to the government at all for what I choose to be or not be injected into my children is crazy to me. It is crazy to me that Texas claims to pride itself on being just we're so rugged. We're Texas. We love liberty here. Come and take it, man.
Let's fight.
Do you see how that argument kind of crumbles? When you realize that we have to answer to the government on whether we want to inject something into our bodies or our children's bodies, that is wild, man. That's not freedom at all. So sure, if you're looking at this from New York or California and you're looking in from one of those states have like the craziest restrictions. Like you can only get medical exemptions in those states. And even those are really, really hard to get. Those are like, well, you're lucky you didn't die from taking the other vaccines, so we guess we won't make you take any more. But it was a close call, right? Those are states that are super, super strict. And so I understand if there's like a Californian or someone from New York looking in and they're like, yeah, but you have all these exemptions. Yeah, but we shouldn't even have to. Because it shouldn't have been mandated. It shouldn't be a requirement in the first place. Especially when you talk about Texans' tax dollars. Like my tax dollars are going to public schools. So you have a person who doesn't want to vaccinate their children, has looked through all of the evidence, and they have made the parental decision that it's not worth the risk for them, for their particular family, because every family's circumstances are obviously different. And you have them, and they just want to send their kids to the school that they pay tax money towards. And you're telling me they can't do it unless they get permission from the government? That's wild. So when you approach this issue, I hope this happens. I really hope this happens. But when you approach this issue, it really comes down to this. The pro-abortion crowd always likes to make the false argument, my body, my choice. And the reason that they do that is because they know that bodily autonomy is like the most important freedom that you could have. If you do not have bodily autonomy, if you are not in charge of what gets injected into your body, what freedom do you even have? Like, that is one of the highest, I should say the lowest bar that you could possibly have when you're talking about freedom. And think about the slippery slope in that if the government has the ability to mandate what gets injected into your body and what doesn't, extend that out to its logical conclusion. You think it just stops at vaccines? It doesn't. So the pro-abortion crowd, they were so I don't want to say smart, but they're very cunning in their use of the language that they use. It's always very, very intentional because they know that bodily autonomy should be a given because bodily autonomy is a natural right. That is an inherent right that every single person, not just of the state, not just of this country, but of the entire world should have. And so they use my body, my choice to try to make that argument. The problem for them is that it, of course, doesn't. That's not a correct argument because it's not just your body. It's obviously another person, another human being with their own DNA, right, and their own autonomy that they should have as well. But the only conversation that is being had right now where my body, my choice actually fits is this one right here. Vaccine choice. Does the government have the right to compel a free citizen, those of you who are listening on audio podcasts, I'm using air quotes for that, a free citizen, does the government have the right to compel a citizen to inject something into their body? That's not free at all. And so this is the conversation in which my body, my choice needs to be used, and needs to be used as long and as loud as it takes to get our government to recognize that they do not have the ability to coerce, to force, to mandate anyone to inject anything into them, into themselves, or their family members. I'm very encouraged by this. I think it's a great start to, before they're even going into session here in Texas, people like Andy Hopper are looking at this topic. They're looking at this conversation and they're saying, hold on, guys. We saw the mistakes that were made during COVID. We were a day late and $1 short, actually 2 years late and hundreds of thousands of dollars short to the conversation on COVID vaccines. But now that we've admitted that that shouldn't happen, we need to extend that logic to all of the other places where we are currently engaging in the same bad logic, thinking that the government or an employer or whoever has the right to dictate to someone what they put into their bodies. So, can you tell this is a topic that I'm passionate about? It's just common sense. It's just common sense. It just needs to happen.
Make it happen.
And I know, before I go, I'm going to say this. I know that there is a crowd, there is a certain sector of people who want to make the argument that it's for the greater good. But what if my child has to go to school with a child who didn't get vaccinated? Well, let me tell you, if your vaccine works, you have nothing to worry about. I know everyone wants to talk about the topic of herd immunity. Well, you don't need to have that conversation. A, because the rates have not dipped that low, but B, also because, when you talk about this herd immunity situation, which is kind of a bogus argument because herd immunity was always a theory, and the theory extended to immunity, natural immunity, not vaccine-derived immunity. So now we're testing this herd immunity theory on vaccine-derived immunity, which it was never even proposed for that type of immunity. So the whole thing is bogus, but I won't even get into that. Okay. Let's just look at the reason why this country was founded, the principles in which this country was founded on. You've got one argument that it's for the greater good. You've got the other argument that it is an individual right? That you have an individual right to refuse something into your body. You don't need a qualifier to participate in a free society. We already are supposed to be a free society. There's no token for entry. We just already are supposed to have a free society. You don't need a token of entry in order to participate in it, okay? And then there's the greater good argument. And do you know what the greater good argument is? It's for the greater good. It's for society, but you have to do it because it's better for society. That's collectivism. Do you know what collectivism is at its end result? Communism. That's it. And here in this country, we're supposed to be the anti-communists, especially here in the state of Texas. So you just can't make that argument if you believe in individual rights and individual freedoms. You just can't.
News and analysis on what's happening in Texas. End your day with daily headlines from Texas Scorecard. Every day at 5 p.m., join me, Brandon Waltons, as we recap the biggest stories of the day and talk about why they matter to you. From the state capitol to town hall, there's no shortage of events happening. Keep up with it all. Watch and subscribe to Daily Headlines from Texas Scorecard.
It's communism, or it's you have a constitutional right to refuse an injection into your body. That's the way I see it. It's really that simple. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this. I would love to hear. I know that this is a very hotly contested topic, so I would love to hear your thoughts on this. At the end of the day, When you live in a free society, you assume risks the moment that you walk outside your door. When you drive in your car, you are assuming the risk that you may get into a car accident. You go anyway. When you go to the store, you're assuming the risk that you may run into someone who has the flu, and you then may catch the flu. There are risks that we always have understood, that we've agreed to. It's baked into the price of participating in a free society. And you can't take people's rights away, and you can't limit people's rights when it comes to bodily autonomy because of sickness. You just can't do it. So I hope that Texas will make the right decision on this, especially when the argument has to be made. You already agreed that this was wrong with the COVID-19 vaccine. What makes any of the other ones different? It's the same concept. And if that is my individual right needs to be extended to all of them. Get rid of the requirements for public schools to begin with, and give us the constitutional right back that we know we inherently, naturally, already should have. I'm going to be watching all of you in the legislature. I'm going to be watching you. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Make Texas great again. Make Texas healthy again. Do the right thing for individual rights. And I'm hopeful that they will do that, especially with all of these incoming freshmen here ready to rock and roll, ready to just get to a redder, more conservative, freedom-loving, liberty-loving Texas. And until next time, we will hope you guys take care. Make sure that you comment. Let us know what you think. If you're listening to the podcast audio-wise, make sure that you rate it, review it. Give us 5 stars because obviously we deserve it. And send us your reviews. That will help us tremendously. And we will see you next week on Come and Take It.